Hello, Alaska. Welcome back to the Alaska Outdoors Podcast. I'm your host, Caleb Martin, and this podcast is brought to you by Explore Alaska, your connection to the Alaskan outdoors. Be sure to check out our website, explorealaska.org, for all your Alaskan-based apparel, tips, tricks, updates for all things Alaska outdoors. We have a very special guest with us today, bringing us a very special story from August of 2019 in the Talkeetna Mountains. She went through what most might consider a worst fear, a backcountry rescue via the Garmin inReach. Please join me in welcoming Angel Heaton to the show. Angel, I first heard about your story on Facebook on the Mountaineering Club of Alaska page. You had posted there about the incident. Why don't you bring us back to that post, and we'll just kind of work our way backwards a bit from there.
Okay. So it was the MCA Facebook page, and first off, that group, it's an amazing group. I didn't actually realize they maintained some of the huts. So my hike, I was actually trying to get to the Mint Hut. I found the group on Facebook, and I was merely looking for, information on, how I can prepare myself for this hike, because it was like my first one. My first like real hike, I could say. Overnight, like the whole ordeal, not just 5 mile, 6-hour hike type thing. So that page, so I posted my story in there. First off, I posted in it asking for advice. I'm like, hey, I'm going to the Mint Hut. Well, that was the plan. Any tips, tricks, and everyone was super awesome and supportive and really quick to, help. And so anyways, after my hike, about 4 days after, I posted this story of how my hike turned out to kind of update everyone and to, obviously, hopefully help someone learn from me, because thankfully I'm still here to be able to tell this story, because it could have gone so much worse. Let's see, the hike itself, as I said, I was going to the Mint Hut. My buddy told me about it back in Fairbanks, because that's where I'm from, you could say. So when I moved to the valley, it was, I wasn't sure if I was going to actually do it, but then I decided I was. And when I made that decision, it was about 2 months prior to the hike itself. And I was going on little hikes every weekend, so I was like, this is enough time to, lead up to that. So then that's when I started asking around on the MCA group page, and, I went to I can't remember what store it was, but I went to the store, and I went down the whole list, and I was like, hey, I need this and this and this and this, all the recommendations. And one of the things, what saved, like the first aspect of what saved my life was my Garmin GPS that I got. And I wasn't going to get one, actually. And I was like, the kid there, he really talked me into it and was like, look, I know it's pricey, but get it. You never know. And thank goodness I did. So I got all the stuff, and then I set out for my hike. I left at like 8 in the morning, I wanted to say. It was on August 2nd. And I was doing great, super fast at first. And then I'd say it's about like mile 5 into it where it started getting really overgrown. And I actually went down, I guess, animals, their paths are pretty similar to ours. So I went down, I got lost like 3 times. And so at that point, I started losing a lot of time. I mean, I wasn't even to the Mint Hut yet, and it's already about 8-9 hours. And so I'm getting exhausted. And then, unfortunately, I never did find the Mint Hut. I know I was close because I started hearing like some sounds, and I'm like, I think it's close, so I'm just going to pitch up tent here. I found it's like a hill on a mountain. The best way to describe it. But I climbed to the top of it, the highest point I could find, and pitched up tent. And I was like, I'm going to sleep here. And then in the morning, I'll continue on, find the hut just to say I found it, and then hike back. And so I'm exhausted, and I pass out. And I must say, I was, this is my first overnight hike. I was pretty nervous. I was confident in myself, but I was nervous of, bears, for instance. I've never seen one, unfortunately. I don't know. I don't know if I really want to see one now. But anyways, I was pretty nervous, and so my gun. So I must say, I had it in a holster this whole time, and it's just a little handgun. It was the smaller, so it's a Smith & Wesson 40 caliber, and it was like the smaller version. I don't know how to describe it, but it's pretty compact. And so I had it in the holster on my side, the whole hike, everything, and that's obviously not going to put down a bear, but that wasn't what my intent was. It was more of like the two-legged well, I guess you could just say people. It was other people on the trail I was more afraid of, because I am solo hiking, which I wanted to do, by the way. I kind of did get criticism on the solo hiking, but that was my goal. I wanted to do it by myself. Anyways, so my gun, it was in my holster, and it wouldn't come off of my belt on my pants. And I'm so tired. I was like, you know what? I don't even want to deal with this. So I took my gun out. It was loaded. And I put it up next to my head. And I got in my sleeping bag, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to pass out, wake up super early. Well, anyways, so it was really cold that night. I must say it was really cold, much more than I expected. So I'm like hurtling, shivering in my sleeping bag, and I feel the gun. Well, how did it happen? Yes, so I'm really cold. I start bundling myself up into like a ball inside my sleeping bag, and I was like, oh no, like my gun's outside. What if, I don't know, something attacks my tent basically, and there goes my gun. I don't know where it's at. It's dark. And so I was like, well, what if I put it near my head in my sleeping bag? It should be fine. I don't move a lot in my sleep. I should be fine. And unfortunately, I did move. And I was against a rock. So I'm pretty sure I was even sleeping on rocks. So it was so unlevel. And the gun slid down to like I'd say like my hip area, my right side. And so I felt it, the coldness of it. And so I was like, oh. So I went to turn over, and I didn't even think about it. It was, 1 a.m. I just did not think. And so I grabbed the gun and, trigger safety. And unfortunately, I pulled the trigger while I was turning. And that is how I shot myself. Yes.
So let's back up just a little bit.
Yeah,
So you left on the trail to the gold mint hunt.
Yeah.
I'm looking at all trails here. It's a 13.4 mile trail they rate as moderate. So you went to camp around mile 5 in it?
No.
At that point?
I got to about mile 9.5.
Mile 9.5.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and from the sounds of it, it looks like you had a pretty hard day, getting lost a few times, getting turned around,
Exactly.
beating through brush.
It was definitely tougher than I expected, definitely. Oh, and I did wear the wrong shoes, which made it even that much worse.
Right. So, yeah, I think a lot of our listeners can probably relate. We've all looked at a map. I've done it a million times. Anybody that knows me knows, I'm 90% of the time solo in my adventures, and
Yeah.
I do a lot of trips in the field. And, you look at a map, look at a trail, look at pictures on social media, it's pretty easy for a lot of people to look at that who have never done it or been there or even been on the specific trail that you were in and say, that looks easy, I could, crush that, no problem, and then get out there and who knows, the weather could be crappy, or they could have dressed a little wrong or grabbed the wrong shoes, or just had a little bit of, of the wrong gear, and then pretty soon, it's pitch black and you're far away from your truck or your car where you want to go, and you're not quite to your destination, and you just roll the sleeping bag out and hop in. Moose hunting, I can't tell you how many times I've ended up sleeping in a spot that's probably not made to be slept in, that,
Right.
You're just like, I just need to lay down and sleep. I'm tired, so it's definitely understandable to be in that situation where it's just, oh man, I just need to get off my feet, take the shoes off, take the socks off,
Mhm.
and
Just
crawl into the
be
sleeping
done.
bag.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so especially in that area, in a being unfamiliar area that people go into, and like an area you're not familiar with going into, it's not unheard of or unreasonable to think, hey, I should bring bear protection. I mean, 2019 we had a few bear attacks in Anchorage. I think two people actually passed away in Eagle
I heard
River.
of that. Yeah, exactly.
And
Um,
then from 2010, you can see, if you look up the statistics on it, you can see the bear attacks gradually rise all the way from 2010 all the way up to 2016. So, I mean, having bear protection isn't necessarily a bad idea, or having a firearm. But
yeah, see, I had both. I did have bear spray as well. So that is what my goal was with the bears, with the spray. The gun was more
right, okay,
other, yeah.
all right, yeah. Well, I mean, single female, young, trail out,
Yeah,
remote
exactly.
wilderness in Alaska. I mean, that's not
Yeah,
not
no.
unreasonable either. I mean, carrying protection no matter where you are isn't a bad idea, especially in
No. And the
today's
thing too,
society.
like I would say is I would rather be in a situation where I had a gun and not needed it than need the gun and not have it. So
Right. Okay. So, yeah. I mean, I think that's really everybody is.
it,
When you need something like a firearm, you really need something like a firearm, and there's nothing else that's really going to replace that, or really do what you need a gun to do in that
yeah,
situation.
I
So,
mean, exactly.
let's you're in the tent. It's 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yes.
You roll over onto your pistol,
Yep.
and you go to grab it or move it, and it goes off. Did you load it before you start hiking, or was it just like do you carry loaded? I know a lot of people, I mean, say the gun's pretty useless if you don't carry it loaded, so that's
Yes.
not even
See, that's how
unrealistic
I
either.
feel as well. But it was in its holster, so I felt pretty confident in it.
Right. And then yeah, I mean, are we talking about just nylon, like Blackhawks with a
Yeah,
strap across the back holding it in there? Okay.
exactly that.
All right, and then so 1 o'clock in the morning, you
Hmm.
roll over on top of your pistol. You go to grab it and move it. It goes off, and it enters the top of your hip,
It
from what it
does.
sounds like,
Yep, the right one.
and then it exited lower on your leg.
Yep, it sure did. Like closer to my kneecap.
Whew.
Mhm.
And so what's your immediate thought when that happens?
You know, so the sound, like I still kind of get flashbacks with the sound because it was so loud. It was so I was just kind of dumbfounded, like what happened? And it took me like my ears were kind of ringing in a sense, and I just kind of froze. And then like the wheels start turning, and then I'm like, oh, that was my gun, and I think I just shot myself. And so of course I had to check.
All right, natural reaction is, what just happened? Let's
Yeah,
look at it.
yeah, exactly. Let's look. Oh my goodness. Ooh, yeah, looking at it. So it was point blank. I mean, the barrel was on my hip, and so it ricocheted off my bone itself. It shattered that part that it hit, but that is how it
Oof.
popped out my thigh, and somehow didn't break. Well, it shattered my hip, but other than that, it didn't do any other damage. It didn't hit an artery, nothing, which is amazing.
Wow. So gun goes off.
Yeah.
You pull back your sleeping bag,
Mhm.
and you look at it, and I mean, I imagine most people would just be like, "Oh crap,"
Yeah.
like shell shocked. I imagine for a minute. I mean,
Yeah.
I could only imagine. I've been in the middle of nowhere, hundreds of times, by myself, solo, and being solo, you every choice you make really can affect not only your
Definitely.
success out there,
Definitely.
but your survival, as you well know, in this situation. So at this point, realization is setting in, like you're in a bad situation.
Mhm. 'Cause, mhm. 'Cause, mhm. 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 Mhm.
Obviously, I'm not sure what your medical background is, but you're probably worrying about, an upper thigh hit. I think most people would
Exactly.
probably also be thinking, your femoral artery runs through there. And
Mhm.
so if anybody that doesn't know, if you cut your femoral artery, I mean, you're on a time clock, a pretty relatively short one. So
Yeah.
once you come to your senses, what was the first thing you did? What happened next? Where did you go from there?
Okay. So, first, so when I saw that I shot myself in the thigh, I was looking at it because I'm like, I don't understand. Like, it doesn't look like I shot myself. It looked like it came out. At this point, I didn't realize it went in my hip because all I thought and could see was my thigh, and I just was puzzled, and I was trying to figure that part out. And I was watching like it bleed, and it wasn't. I knew it didn't hit an artery because it wasn't squirting out blood. It wasn't. It wasn't too bad. I mean, it was bleeding, but anyways. And then my elbow happened to graze my hip, and that's how I realized I shot myself in the hip, and that's where it made sense. Where I put the two together, and then I'm like, oh, well, I just shot myself. And so the first thing I did was hit the SOS button on my Garmin. And so then that is what started it all. And so it contacted the national response. And then they contacted, of course, Alaska, and they had to contact the troopers. I'm not sure if it's the National Guard or however that works, but so anyways, I hit my button, first thing I did, and then it was just waiting. At that point, I must say I just put the sleeping bag back over my leg, and I was like, look, like I still wasn't too sure, and I was like, if I did, some bad damage, it's probably not going to last too much longer. So I just kind of, it's sad to say, but I kind of accepted it. I was like, all right, like, here we go. All I can do is wait on people to come save me. I really can't do much for myself. I mean, unfortunately, I did not have what is it called when you tie something off to stop the
Oh, a
bleeding?
tourniquet.
A tourniquet, yes. I did not have a tourniquet. I looked at it before I left, and I was like, I won't need that. So I left that home, but I had a belt, and so I did use that, and I tied it off as best as I could, and just had to wait. Unfortunately, okay, and I was screaming at first. So when I, fully accepted I just shot myself, I started screaming for help, like praying someone would hear me, like, and I thought too, did anyone hear my gunshot? But the Mint Hut was lower than I was, and so there were people there. There were people so close to me, but they heard nothing. They didn't know until they saw the helicopter land, well, trying to land.
So you realized your hip
Yeah,
is shot. You realize you have a wound in your lower leg. You're trying to apply pressure, trying to
yeah,
do a tourniquet, regretting leaving that tourniquet behind, and
yes.
probably internally thanking a lot of people for that. For the thanking one particular individual for the advice of buying the InReach. I'm sure right
Yes.
now.
Yes, I actually found him afterwards, and I thanked him, and I was like, "You saved my life." Like, he really did.
A lot of people, we say this a lot, especially in the hunting industry, about something along the lines, you never regret good gear,
Yes,
and
that's a great.
I've used my InReach the last couple years since I've had it, and now, I mean, I literally don't go in the woods or don't leave the car or don't go anywhere without InReach.
I wouldn't, honestly. Mhm.
For people for people that don't know and don't have an inReach is a small satellite messenger that uses an iridium satellite that basically allows you to have a device in your hand that can text from anywhere in the world. Day or night, you pay a small subscription for it, and it also sends GPS coordinates to who you're texting, or in the event of emergency, like Angels, you can hit an SOS button on it and immediately sends you to a 24-hour call center
Yeah.
that will send your notification and GPS coordinates to the appropriate rescue coordination. In this event, it looked like it was the Air National Guard that actually responded, and it seems like they respond mostly to the remote stuff and the high mountain stuff, but
Mhm.
Sounds like they did a pretty good job getting to you. Were they able to land close, right on top of you, or I know a
Mm,
lot of these mountain rescues can get pretty tricky, where you know
exactly.
they have to land pretty far away to come and
Yep.
find you. So,
That's that's exactly it. Yeah. So I didn't. I mean, I've never been in a helicopter before, anyway, so I didn't know what to expect. But yeah, they couldn't land where I was, and so they had to go to a lower level, and so that's where the paratroopers, parajumpers, got out, and then they had to climb up to me to get to me. A little story about that. So I saw the helicopter. At first I heard it, obviously. So it's 3 hours at this point, and I'm falling asleep. I'm just kind of, I don't know. I was whatever. I was just done. And so, anyways, finally, I hear the sound of it, and I'm looking like so. I had a little tent window I could see out of, and so I couldn't reach it, obviously. So, anyways, I collapsed my whole tent just so I could see outside because my leg completely, I could not move, nothing. And so, anyways, so I finally see the lights of it, and I didn't realize. So they got really close to me, and so I thought this was it. So I covered my face up, and I'm waiting and waiting, and then I hear the helicopter leaving, and I start freaking out, and I was like, "Oh, like they're leaving me. They didn't find me." And well, no, it was because they let the parajumpers out, and so they were climbing up to me, and then they got to me, and once they got me all good to go, then the helicopter came back.
so you're laying there in the tent. 3 hours went by.
Yeah.
Were you losing a lot of blood? I mean, how does those 3 hours go by? I can imagine just sitting alone in a
Right.
tent. No idea how close
Hmm.
people are, how far you are from other people. How much damage is going on, what's going on with your leg.
Uh-huh.
So I mean, those 3 hours must have felt like a very, very long time, I imagine.
They really did. What really sucked about it was, I don't know, I felt like I had, I knew there was people close. I just knew there was, and it was irritating in a sense that I couldn't go. I couldn't do anything to get their attention. Because my light I was saving for the helicopter. Because I mean, after an hour and a half, I was like, okay, like I don't know how long this is really going to take. Because they told me, like, look, you know, we'll get you soon. And they would never give me an exact time. And I'm glad they didn't, because that's all. I was just staring at my inReach, waiting for, and I felt bad. I kept asking the same thing over and over again, was how much longer? How much longer? And then I apologized because I felt bad that they had to come get me. But yeah, I just stared at that for those 3 hours, and just hoped that they would come. I didn't know. See, that's the thing with the Garmin. I had no prior experience with that, so I didn't know how it worked, and I didn't know who was coming, if anyone at all. So yeah, I had to kind of mentally prepare myself for that. Like, what if they are not able to get me? How can I guess, survive still?
So you're laying there, not
Hmm.
knowing what's happening, when they're coming. Are you bleeding quite a bit? Not bleeding at all? Could you feel your leg? Did you try to move at all, or get up and move out of that position, or did you just apply your tourniquet that you made, and then just kind of stay put and wait to be rescued?
So, I did try to move. So my first thing was, because, as I said, I knew people were close, so I was like, okay, look, maybe it's not that bad. Maybe like I could, because there was a ledge, and I'm pretty certain the Mint hut was over that ledge, and I was like, look, maybe I could crawl to this ledge and, you know, shoot off a flare or something. And so that's what I was going to attempt to do. But as soon as I tried to move my leg, I couldn't. It was just dead weight. I couldn't even feel it. It didn't feel like it was even a part of me anymore. Um, no, the bleeding wasn't that bad, actually. For what it was, I mean, my sleeping bag was lined in blood, but it really wasn't that much blood.
Wow, I'm just looking at the pictures for the listeners who can't see. I mean, looking at the entrance wound and exit wound, it's
Yes.
like, I mean, very lucky. I mean, for most people that can't tell if you just touch your right side and feel your hip bone. It looks like it entered just left of your hip bone. Is that about right?
So it hit directly on it.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it hit it. It's really neat. So the CAT scan I got, it looks like it's like a crater in a sense. My hip bone does, because the bullet hit, shattered everything around it, and then just kept going.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
40 cal bullet is definitely a hot round, especially point blank. I'm actually kind of surprised there's not more damage. Impressively. I
Me
mean,
too, honestly.
and if it was I imagine if it wasn't point blank and even a little off your skin a little bit more, it probably would have caused a lot more. But it looks like it was a solid copper bullet, which is very very good for you in that sense. If you're going to shot with a
Yeah,
bullet and hopefully less amount
exactly.
of damage, a solid one
Definitely.
would be the way to.
That actually, regarding the bullets, before I left, I was debating on if I should take, what is the hollow point, I
Yeah,
believe?
right.
There's so many different terms for it, you know. But anyways, yes, I was debating on which one I should take. And thank goodness I didn't take the hollow point.
Oh yeah, that would have ended even worse than it is. I mean, it's pretty. It looks like it took over 2 months to heal. I imagine you're probably still healing up for it, but just on the surface, skin surface, it looks like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it's just the surface. It's an everyday, it hurts all the time type thing. And I still have the jacket itself in my leg, so that's uncomfortable. So I'm still healing.
So they finally got to you at about 1:30 in the morning. Is that accurate?
No, so I shot myself at 107, and they got to me about 4
Oh,
o'clock.
4 o'clock. Okay, and then yeah, obviously 3 hours, and then so you're laying in the tent, not knowing what's happening, don't even know the paratroopers are there. So what happens next? They're walking up to you when you're laying there and hey.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They just walk up to me and was like, "Hey," like they were like checking to see if, because I was sitting up. Well, I was trying to sit up at this point, and I think I was in shock because I was just talking to him like, nothing happened, no big deal. And I'm just talking to him like, "Oh yeah, yeah, it's this leg right here," and they're just, I could tell they wasn't sure what to think, and then they just kind of got into the motion of it. They started looking at it. They got me strapped up to the flatboard, and then bundled me up because it was so cold in that wind. And then hooked me up to the helicopter, and they got to pull me up into the air, which was kind of, I mean, I guess you could say neat. I guess not the greatest of situations, but yeah, they were amazing though. So yeah, they get me up into the helicopter, and then they just take control. And the paramedic, I'm pretty sure that's what they were paramedics. They the one that was like right next to my head, he was like he was perfect. He really was. How he because that's where I kind of started to freak out a little bit. I don't know why it took until there. I think maybe because, I knew I was safe, I could kind of let my guard down. And I did. And so I started crying, and like I held his arm the whole time, and I was squeezing him, and he was trying to work on me. So he was being so kind about it though. And I held his arm up until until I got into Providence. And then I had to let him go.
Well, that's unfortunate. It sounds like.
No.
So.
Yeah, it was and then they got me into the trauma bay, and I'm still like, just talking normal to these people, and I'm pretty sure I looked crazy. But yeah, and I was just, they weren't sure what to expect, and they were really worried about if I hit something in my stomach and so I kept like reassuring them, like, look, it went in me and it went out. Like, there's no bullet in there. Like, can you just like make it stop hurting, please? And so they did. Oh, they gave me so many medications, and it was great until you have to come off of those medications, and that was horrible. The sickest I've ever been. So the recovery was really tough at first. It was adjusting to it all. And then, once I'm out of the hospital, I don't have anyone to take care of me. So then it was me trying to take care of myself, and it was rough. It really was.
So in the picture,
Hmm.
do you have the 40 cal bullet in your hand after the incident? I'm looking at your Facebook post right now.
Yeah.
So did only part of the jacket come out and the bullet was still actually in your leg, or did it lodge just underneath the skin, or just trying to picture what happened internally after it went through your hip bone?
Okay, so the bullet came out. That's in the picture. I still have the bullet, but the jacket is what it left behind along the trail of my body. Yeah, so the bullet's out. It's just the jacket that's left in there.
Okay, and did they remove the bullet, or did it was
No, it was kind of cool is it was in my tent afterwards. So, oh yes, the parajumpers, they just took my whole tent, everything, and I was actually really really worried about that. Surprisingly, given the situation, but I had a lot of expensive gear there, and so they just bundled it all up for me and took it to the trauma bay with me. And so, anyways, when I'm going through all this stuff afterwards, the bullet falls out. Yeah.
Well, what an experience. S-
Uh, Definitely.
s-
It wasn't how, okay, I must say the hike itself was the best hike I've ever done. It was beautiful. I mean, I got what I wanted from it. I mean, that feeling of, I don't know, just being in the wild like that, and just, it felt amazing. And so it was definitely worth it. Just obviously learn from my mistakes. Yeah, but I love the hike, and I do plan on redoing it on the year anniversary. And that's when my physical therapist said that's the goal, and I should be able to do it. So that is my goal.
that's an awesome goal to have and a great outlook to
Thanks.
come out of a situation like this. I can only imagine. I mean, for a person like me, it sounds like you are very, outdoorsy and
Yeah.
into spending time outdoors. I mean, if I lost my ability to hike like I do now or spend time outdoors, a lot of people make decisions, I think, so quickly sometimes that they don't realize
Yeah.
the potential consequences. Much like in your case, it sounds like, if you could agree with me. Maybe I'm off base there, but
Oh no, 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 no. Of course, I do agree. Exactly. Um, that was actually one of the hardest things because at first, so I progressed a lot more than I thought I would have. And so in the beginning, I was being told, I'll never walk normal again. And it crushed my soul thinking I'll never be able to hike again. And that was so devastating to me. And then so it kind of like fueled my fire of, well, no, like I'm going to at least, fight that. So I was unfortunately recovery wise, because it's kind of prolonged it a bit. I started walking as soon as I could, and I probably should have rested longer, but here I am though, and I'm walking perfectly fine. And so in a year, well, not a year now, but at the year mark, I'll be able to do that hike.
so,
Hopefully, I'm definitely not going to push. If I have any doubts about it, I'm definitely not going to do it.
so how long did it take before you started walking normally again?
So surprisingly, I was at first they didn't even want to keep me at the hospital. They're like, "Look, it's a clean shot. You didn't hit any arteries. Yeah, you really don't need to be here." And it was the same morning basically. And so thankfully, my nurses and everyone, they're like, "Oh no, like well." They talked to the doctor, and they at least admitted me for observation for 3 days, and so which was a blessing having all that help. But walking normal, it took not normal, I wouldn't say normal, but walking again, it was about a month before I was actually able to walk without a crutch. I tried a cane, but I couldn't get it. But a month where I could actually walk small distances, but it took a couple months before I was able to go grocery shopping, just doing the usual But I'm still like, I still can't run. I still can't, I still got to take it easy. And it's already been a little over 5 months now. So it's definitely changed my life.
Can only imagine that's a pretty traumatic experience. I mean, start to
It
finish. I
was.
mean, being alone, not knowing what's going to happen, then coming back and being in the hospital. And I mean, it sounds like you really, really got lucky. I mean, it's an
I
unlucky
really
situation,
did.
but I mean, the path of the bullet. I mean, going in another direction, I mean, it could have ended pretty severely for you.
Yeah. Like, I feel like almost any other way, it would have been so much worse. I really feel like I had like the perfect shot. If you're gonna shoot yourself, I think I did pretty well.
Hikers with firearms, take note if you're going to shoot yourself.
Right.
So,
Oh man, but I must say though, after being shot now, it completely changed my attitude about having guns. You know, because I took them shooting like that's what I grew up on, so I was comfortable with it, and it definitely opened my eyes. Like, you know, you got to prepare for the unexpected. You know, you really do. So now, you know, I'm a lot more careful with my gun, definitely. Yeah. And I'm actually going to take another class actually to kind of, I don't know, reinforce my knowledge of it, because it's a pretty serious mistake to make. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, any mistake with firearms, I mean, it's going to have serious consequences. A lot of
Definitely.
people, I think, you know, training is there to reinforce the good habits and
Yes,
lessons learned
exactly.
and make it muscle memory in the future. So, I mean, I think we encourage everybody that, if you're going to
Yeah, there's
carry a
never enough
firearm,
training, honestly. You could keep,
go ahead.
there's always room to grow.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're carrying a firearm, you definitely train with it. Train all the time. Train, train, train. I mean, take classes. You should definitely. I think
Yes,
everybody should at least take a intro class into carrying firearms and be familiar with them, and
definitely.
then train from there. But it sounds like for the most part, though, other than the fact of you actually rolling over on your pistol, everything else was pretty right about the situation. I mean, this.
I was trying. I really was. I mean, I asked. So I must say, it's just me up here. I don't have any family. So I didn't really have many people besides that online, Facebook group to really ask about, how to do an overnight hike that far into the mountains on your own. And so, I really was trying. I really was.
So after the fact, after this all happened, and you were back out and start not quite walking in, but working on it, what made you post this Facebook post? And that's where I originally saw it on the Mountaineering Club of Alaska Facebook. Here's actually a couple quotes from your post. It says, "I
Yeah,
never should have carried a gun I didn't have the proper training with. So many things I should have done differently. I took 2 weeks to prepare for this trip. It wasn't just some rash decision. At the last moment, I decided to leave my gun, the gun I was trained with, to take my friends per recommendation."
I wrote the original story, and that's part of the original one.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did go back and edit it for the criticism I started getting really got to me. So I started just deleting parts of the story because I didn't want to hear about it anymore. But yeah, so it was that gun specifically. I didn't own that gun; it was my friend's gun, and so I mean, I've shot it a couple times, but I never cleaned the gun. Like, I never spent time with it,
Right?
and so that is what I meant by the proper training. And I chose to leave. So my gun was a 9mm, and I chose to leave that one and to take my friend's. Unfortunately.
Well, I mean, that's not a hugely uncommon thing. I mean, a lot of people,
Yeah.
going out, they don't own, what most would prefer to call a bare caliber pistol, so they're looking at, hey, I'm going out. Hey, can I borrow, a lot of guys, can I borrow your
Exactly.
44? Can I borrow this weapon? And,
Exactly.
I think a lot of people can get steered wrong in that situation where they're
Yes.
they're thinking, hey, I'm safer taking the bigger pistol versus the
No,
pistol
bigger's not
I'm
always better.
right versus the pistol they're unfamiliar
No.
with. So, you shouldn't really worry too much about that. I mean, obviously, it's you know,
True.
it wasn't,
Well, thanks.
you should definitely train with the pistol you
Yeah.
plan on carrying, and
Oh, for
you
sure.
know, whether it's 9 mil, people get so focused on this caliber debate
I
on what they
know.
carry, and
I know.
it's really the most proper gun, the best gun that you can carry is one you know well, because if
Exactly.
it does fail, how to
100%.
fix it. It does know all these other things, so it's not too crazy of a thing to borrow a pistol for a
Yeah.
certain hike, especially when you're prepared for it. You were doing everything I think most people would try to do. You studied the area, you prepared for hiking, you gathered
Oh,
all gear, you got, you know, you're checking all the boxes that I think that a lot of people would agree with is what they would do preparing for a hike. So, a lot of things went right there.
yeah. Well, thanks. I appreciate that. I really do, because I definitely doubted myself afterwards, but that was temporary.
Just reading the Facebook post here, and they're talking a little bit about
Yeah, yeah,
bears and the reaction you kind of got from the community after this happened, I guess.
yes. Oh man. So in this group, I didn't realize how many people were a part of this group. Because the previous posts I've made, I would get maybe like 20 comments, 30 comments, not too much. But anyways, then this like people started sharing my story, and I started getting so many messages, and it was overwhelming. I didn't expect that at all, but I really appreciated it though, because I needed it. I did. I felt so horrible afterwards, and so it kind of there were obviously people who were kind of negative about it. I didn't. It got to me at first, but then I was like, shh, like when you compare the ratio of people that they understood, they could relate. You compare that to the people who were just being nasty. It really, I mean, they didn't matter at all, and so yeah, the community was amazing, I must say. I've actually been recognized a couple of times out in public, which was weird. But they would look at me, and at first, I had a limp, and they're like, "Did you shoot yourself?" And I was like, "I did." That's me.
Well, that's certainly one
And
way
so
to
yeah,
break the
I've
ice.
actually met some really great people.
So that's awesome. So it sounds like you have a great attitude about the whole situation. We really appreciate you talking with us about it and sharing the story. I mean, that's we try to focus on a lot is sharing